Welcome to Succession Stories. I'm your host, Laurie Barkman, founder of Small.Big. As an exit value planning and M&A advisor, I call myself a business transition Sherpa. My mission is guiding entrepreneurs on ways to build value in your business and then benefit by letting it go. On this show, we spotlight the theme of transitions, not only to reward you for your hard work, but also to ensure that you look back on your succession without regret. Catch all the episodes and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to visit successionstories.com to sign up for our newsletter. Here's to your success. Nelson Anderson is the president of Full Sail Media in Baltimore. 16 years ago, he bought a small printing franchise from his father-in-law. And for 10 years, he did it all, from sales to operations and more. At one point, Nelson had 25 direct reports. With the helpful guidance of trusted advisors, Nelson built a team and processes that enabled him to step back. A hard thing to do, but it has enabled their growth through acquisition. He talked about how these strategic acquisitions fit within their organization as tuck-ins. This approach has helped Full Sail Media grow from a small $400,000 print shop to a multifaceted marketing company that's over $8 million in revenue. If you want to make your business more attractive to a potential buyer, make sure to listen to Nelson's suggestions for what you should start doing today.
Nelson Anderson, welcome to Succession Stories. You and I have been waiting for months for this conversation, so I'm really excited. We met last December, which seems like eons ago, and so much has happened. So I'm excited to talk to you not only about your background as a business owner and someone who's made some changes in his business over the years, but someone who's also started to acquire companies. And I think your journey is going to be really relevant and interesting for business owners who have been contemplating either getting sold or buying businesses to tuck in for their growth. So welcome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on, Laurie. I appreciate it.
You're
glad
welcome.
We could finally catch up. Yeah.
Me too. You've been very busy. It's all good stuff, and I'm sure we'll cover it today. So let's talk about you first. Just give us a little bit of background about you and what you do.
Sure. So a little bit of background about me. So I started by buying a Minuteman press from my father-in-law. So it was a small shop, about 4 people. And over time, we grew and grew and grew. We've been doing this for 16 years now. And we've probably purchased about 5 companies over that time in different segments that have allowed us to grow in strategic areas, and ones that haven't been so good, but we can talk about that. And now we went from 4 people to now we're about 50, and we have several different segments to our business. And with an overarching company called Full Sail Media as a marketing umbrella, sales umbrella, but then having the output of printing, direct mail, wide format, and in these marketing services.
And we should add that you are in the Baltimore area.
Yeah, down here in Baltimore, just south of Baltimore, looking to move into Baltimore proper here soon. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, you and I had chatted about that. I got married in Baltimore, so I have a big affinity for the city. It's a great town.
Yeah. All day and burgers, cookies. So
let's talk about Minuteman Press. You bought the franchise from your father-in-law, and that began your journey. What was that like? Were you kind of doing this on your own, bootstrapping it and working 70-hour weeks and coming home late for dinner?
You nailed it. So I was in IT sales of all things prior to that. I was just a baby. I was 23 years old. And my father-in-law came up with a discounted purchase price to sell it to me for. I mortgaged my house and he held the rest of the note. My wife, she worked for her father. So we worked together. I had no clue on print. I just knew how to sell. And then quickly learned about business. I didn't go to college. I went to a Christian school in Annapolis. So it was like a college prep, but I did not do well, right?
It wasn't your thing.
It wasn't my thing. I wanted to work. So we got started, and I'll never forget those first few months and trying to learn how to read a P&L and realizing, how is this going to work? I was used to making pretty good money selling IT. And I realized quickly that it's all about market share and taking care of customers and getting them to come back. So I'll fast forward to about 10 years into the journey, we had constant growth for about 10 years. And it was really, we went from $400,000 in sales when I bought the company. And probably 10 years ago, we were 3 million, maybe $4 million in sales and revenue. And that's really where things broke down for me,
Broke down how?
yeah, sure. Like, you're used to doing everything and having your finger on the pulse. And then it gets to a point where there's too many jobs, there's too many things, there's too many employees that you just can't do it all yourself. And as much as I thought I was Superman and the hero, and I like to play that part, right? That's fulfilling, is that the only way for me to scale and to continue to grow and build a business that is sustainable without me and that services the customer really well. I mean, that's at our heart. Our heart is that we want a customer experience that is above all others and that the customer wins, right? So that's part of our mission and our core values is customer success. I needed to develop the right people around me. And so, we started hiring people. I say we, it was me, and I'm a terrible hirer, like an interviewer. If I like the person, I would hire them. So there was
no matter what skills they have.
Right. I like you. You're cool. I can have a beer with you. So, I had to do some learning. And I never really had anybody speaking, like I didn't have a mentor, I didn't have a business mentor. So, I went on the search then after some failed hires and, people not working out. So I got two people that I was able to lean on. So it was a Christian CEO group that I started to go to. It's now called CXP, Ken Gosnell. I'll drop his name because he's a sweetheart of a guy. He just moved down to Florida, but he was instrumental in helping me through not, all the stuff going on in your head, right? As the lone guy at the top. And then also just, how to deal with the interpersonal part of the executive team. And then I also reached out to Printing and Graphics Association Mid-Atlantic, who connected me with a print-specific consultant. So he was out of Indianapolis, and I'll never forget this, Laurie. I was like, I've had some false starts with consultants. So meaning like, you think they want to do well for you and they talk to you about what they can do for you, and it just doesn't work out. And it really comes down to, do you guys jive and do they have that experience of doing just what you need? Have they done it before? So I'll never forget, I flew out to Indianapolis for a day, and this guy's like, who's flying out to meet me for a day? So he called the main guy that set the whole thing up, that recommended him. And he's like, this, who is this guy? So we kicked off, had a great lunch, ended up talking for 4 hours until I had to get back on the plane and come back. And that was probably about 5 years ago. And he's still my consultant. He comes on our leadership retreats. We talk every week. And he's just been an instrumental part of our growth and my personal development as an owner.
That's fantastic. So let's rewind just a little bit, because I think this trajectory that you talked about, it took about 10 years to, let's call it 10x the business, right? You started out around 400,000 in revenue, got to about 4 million. And then you said, wow, I'm hitting a wall. And when you said everybody was reporting to you, you probably had part-time employees, but then did you also have full-time employees?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. At that time, we probably were in the 25 employee range at that revenue level, maybe a few more.
So if you had an org chart, because you're a printing company, you could print really wide, really long org chart.
Yeah,
very
with
flat.
Me and then everybody. Yeah,
you have the printing, and you have the printing for that. That's cool.
Yeah, we could print it. It just didn't make sense.
It just didn't make any sense. So you started to hire some wrong people. Then you started to find some right people.
Yeah.
Who was a really key hire for you? What were you looking for in what I call a 2IC, a second in command? Did you end up finding that person?
Yeah, so I ended up finding that person about 3 years ago. And I will say that we've had others in place, and they were the right person for the right time in growth. And if I had to do it all over again, I had a great guy that I hired that helped me with production, right? He was the production guy, I was the sales guy, and we had a great yin yang. The issue was he didn't have experience at a larger company. So through through the period that I had him there until, like 5-6 million, he was great. He was the perfect person for this position until that point, to develop processes and implement processes. So it was very uncomfortable just because of, not speaking directly and talking about these things early on in the stage. And he brought tremendous value to the business. But the position that was held, which was my number two, my right hand, right? He hit a ceiling, and we ended up parting ways. Still talk today, still friends. But I ended up, for this level we are at right now, I hired like an operations officer that had print experience for 30 plus years at a much larger company, and he has been just great for our continued growth. He's been through acquisitions and tuck-ins, and been up and been down. So when we experienced COVID, he's experienced times like that in business. So he's just a gold mine when we went through this, and helped me walk through that time.
All right, so take me back a little bit too. So you're still growing. You're realizing you can't do it all. We call this the owner's trap, where you know the customers, especially when you, the owner, are in charge of sales and very involved in the sales process. And then everybody's sort of bouncing back to you. So that we call that the owner's trap. So you've realized that. You realized you didn't want to be in that trap, and you're looking for a way out. You surrounded yourself with some smart people who could balance out your skill set in operations and other areas.
Yeah.
And were these then the boom years, or did you hit another challenge before you started to acquire companies? What got you to that point where you said, where we are headed now is not where I want to be. I want to change my strategy.
Yeah. So I would say, and that's really two separate conversations around acquiring companies and, really building the management team. So Jeff, my operations officer right now, it was a great addition to the team, and he's my right-hand guy. However, we have my sister Susan, who came to work for me about 7 years ago, and has grown. Right, she started as doing accounting work, then customer service, and now she's in charge of our management system, and does we would be lost without her. Then the other person on my management team is my controller, Ian. And so, as a small business owner, right, it was like letting go of these things. I would do the QuickBooks and pay people and run and get checks and, write up orders, and then just peeling off these little pieces to people that you can trust. And Ian has been a friend of mine for 20 years, right? And so the person that's handling your money, you got to be able to trust.
Right.
So that was how that relationship came about. So, and that doesn't come without its troubles. He's a friend, and so it's really difficult to have, hard conversations with him. But he has my best interest in mind, and the company's best interest in mind. And so when you keep that at the forefront, you never lose your track, right? You never lose your way, because we care about each other.
Great. But your sister's in the company. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it was just supposed to be, come help me out, right?
Okay, come help me out.
Yeah.
We know how that goes.
Yeah. And then we sucked her in. So it's just been the gal Friday that does everything that's needed, a Swiss Army knife, if you will, and has grown, personally developed. And she didn't have a print background or anything along those lines, and just has done a wonderful job here.
That's fantastic. So let's go then to talk about your approach to acquiring companies. What type of deals do you look for, and how do you integrate these businesses?
Great question. So our first acquisition, so it's always been kind of a strategy of ours, even before, just a growth strategy is, hey, we need market share. But not only market share, it was, how can we serve the customer? What are they asking for? I've never grown the business because I want to do X. I didn't want to get into the printing business, right? So to speak, I wasn't like, ooh, printing's sexy. I want to do that, right? It was, I want to be of service to the customer. I want to help people. And so we allowed the customer to dictate where we grow. And so the first acquisition that we did was actually a small mailing company that we had done work with. Like, so if we were printing it, we would take it to them to mail it, and they would mail it for us. So I think it was like in 2008, that we did that. They had hit on some hard times, and it was just, the relationship was there, right? So, and I think that is the common thread throughout all of these. The one that's have worked, and the ones that necessarily haven't worked is it added value to the customer, and then also we were in sync, meaning the owner and I. We had the same principles. We had the same, we got along, right? And we managed businesses the same way, managed people's relationships the same way. And so that's really important when it comes to retaining the employees and getting them into the culture. It just takes a long time in order to make sure that this is going to fit right. So anytime we've done an acquisition, it's, I like to call it 51st dates, right? It is like going right back to dating, although I didn't really do that. I married my high school sweetheart. So, but I can imagine this is how.
Yeah, you can only imagine
right?
that it's like that.
But it's finding deeply out about these people, what makes them tick, and just getting to know them and becoming friends with them.
Yeah, there's a lot of small businesses that were struggling around the 2008, 2009, and even today. Do you find that that's the main reason for their wanting to sell, the owners, or is it because they don't have any, they don't have family in the business and they're looking for a succession option?
Mm-hmm.
Are you finding it's kind of a mix of both?
Yeah. So I would say that that's really been the only time that has happened where it was a downturn, and they just wanted out. But he had another business that he was active in, so this was a side business, and he wanted to go off and work the other business that was being successful for him and producing the most cash and get rid of this distraction. And it was just the perfect fit. We needed it. We were doing it. We were his biggest customer. So it made sense. And I would say the other ones are what you just said. It was, they're done. They're ready. They've done this. They've handled customers. They've done the AP, the AR. They're tired of writing orders. They're tired of managing people. It's exhausting. It's also the most rewarding. So that's what we have found as we've done the other acquisitions, is it's they want an off ramp, and some want to stay and some just want to be gone. The most recent acquisition that we just did was AT Direct. Again, was a direct mailer that we have known over the years, have done work for. They bring another level of expertise to our direct mail, and really are on the forefront and the strategy around direct mail, and also produce it. Judy in Tisdale is the owner of AT Direct, and now she has come to work for me. She's here. We retained 100% of the employees when we did that because we were stretched at the time. So it was a great addition. We found great employees that have been with her for 18, 20 years in her 30-year journey. And so I'm just so excited to have her here. She's excited to focus on being with customers and talking direct mail strategy, and then integrating all the other services that we have to offer, because we're a full commercial shop, and we also can add, we also have our digital marketing company, Full Sail Media, that we can add to direct mail, which just like 4x results for our customers.
That's really powerful. So let's talk about the process of acquiring a company. Did you use an intermediary, an M&A advisor, or a broker to help you in these negotiations? How did you know how to value the business and what to offer the business owner?
That is a great question. So I've relied heavily on, I have 3 people. So it's really important that you are connected with people that you trust, that can walk you through it. And every deal is different. They look the same from a 10,000 foot view, but they're all different, and all owners want something a little bit different. And I would say that the common thread for all owners is they want, number one, their employees taken care of over themselves, and number two, they want their customers taken care of over themselves. And it's not, the money's always third. So they want to know, how are their employees going to be taken care of, and how is this going to be for their customers that they've worked their butts off for, you know, in this case, 30 years to take care of and retain that business. So I used, like I said, three people. My print consultant is number one, my lawyer, number two, and number three is my accountant. So I will get a conference call with the three of them, and we will look at this and brainstorm how we can achieve what the seller wants, and how it works into us and all the pickups that we have. Every all of the acquisitions that we've done have been tuck-ins, meaning an earn-out tuck-in situation, where it's might be some money up front, a certain amount paid over time based on sales, and in some cases the owner stays on for a period of time, and some cases they go away and they want to go away.
So how many acquisitions have you done now over the last few years?
So I think it's been about five. It's been about five acquisitions, and ranging in, direct mail, other printers, print brokers, and we still have the majority of the employees from those acquisitions.
And so when you value these businesses, are you doing it as a multiple of their pre-tax profits?
Correct. Yeah. So we take EBITDA, and it's usually a multiple of EBITDA, and then there's other factors that will detract or add to, and so we look at growth as an addition. Like, so we might, if a lot of times the baseline is 4x EBITDA, right? And so if they're on a growth track, if they have low customer saturation, then it might go to 4.5 or 5. But we've also been in a situation where the top two customers are 60% of the sales, so that can definitely be a detractor. Other things that can be detractors is what type of liabilities are we inheriting? So some companies just want to get out from under their lease payments of equipment, and also lease locations. So we're looking at a deal right now where they just signed a commercial lease for their building for 5 more years, and he kind of wants out, but the pickup for me is to not have to pay a lease payment. So it's a really it's a dance that they have to go through. It's a give and a take, and finding what's going to work.
So how are you spending your time now? Are you starting to put your feet up on the desk and kind of take a step back and looking at everything? Or are you still very much in the business?
Absolutely not. Yeah, I could never do that. If I'm not working 50, 60 hours a week, I'll get in trouble. So, so yeah, I mean, a lot of the focus has been around acquisitions. So we kicked off a campaign probably about 8 months ago, where we did a direct mail piece from my print consultant. So it's just, anybody that we might be interested in, we'll send a form letter from my consultant to these businesses that, hey, if they're interested in selling, just start a conversation, right? So he's an intermediary where they're calling him and they don't divulge who we are, and he's having a one-to-one conversation with them and just seeing if it's a good fit. And if it's not a good fit, then we won't move to the next level. And a good fit is, hey, is it fitting within our current organization? What's the business type? Is it in addition to what we do? Is it exactly what we do? And there's some areas we don't want to get into, right? So that's been a great setup. We've created a lot of activity, and has been our latest deal was from that, and we also have 2 to 3 more that we're in conversations with. And I think the story is that we're better together, right? I mean, there's so many businesses out there that might be struggling, or just it's just not it's not the right fit, right? They love what they do. And that's what we found in printing was about 15, 20 years ago. There was a lot of people that got into printing because they were printers. They loved printing. And what I hope to allow for some of these owners to do is do what they love. And hey, if you love to print, and allow us to run the business in conjunction with you. And if you love to sell, let's get you in a sales seat and do what's best, that the highest and best use of your time, right?
Yeah, so I like how you approach it where you have a process from a strategic acquisition standpoint. You're looking out in the market, you're doing some reach outs that are kind of cold calls, right? To say, hey,
Yeah.
we're interested in the conversation. And then it's almost like its own marketing process, its own funnel process,
Mm-hmm.
where eventually they'll have a conversation with you, but there's someone sort of pre-qualifying to
Yeah.
make sure that there is a fit. And just size wise and revenue wise, are these are, I'm assuming, kind of micro market under, maybe under 5 million in revenue businesses?
Exactly right. So, and that's what we find is, we're coming back from COVID, but we're about an $8 million company, right? As we sit right now. And what we find is that $1 million mark is like the perfect size for us to absorb, to tuck in. It's usually 2 to 8 people, an employee size, depending on what kind of business it is. And that's what works for us right now. As we grow, that might change, but right now that's what we're looking at. We'll look at a company as small as 500,000 and up to 3 million. But to get my arms around a $3 million company is going to look a lot different and be a lot more exhausting than a $1 million company. Yeah.
Have you ever had any situations where you walked away from a deal where you were starting that dance, and as you said, you're 51st dates, where you're kind of in date 25 and you think everything's going well, then all of a sudden you're like, I don't like how they hold their fork, I'm out.
It would never be how they hold their fork. I can get past that, but that's funny. Yeah, definitely, 100%. There are times we've had these conversations and just find that it's just not a good fit. And what I have found is, from a commercial print perspective, is depending on where we are in production and size, it might not be the right thing for me just to add more commercial print. It's adding other services that are going to enhance our offering. So, we had just one coming up. I've been talking to this gentleman for probably a year and a half almost, and just finally, it wasn't clicking. We're love him to death, and we've been a resource for each other. It's just he's very involved in exactly the same type of work, but with customers that we don't necessarily have experience with, institutional, government, and it would be a culture shift for us to service that customer well. And we, as a management team, just realized, hey, this is probably not the best thing for us. We would have to alter too much of who we are in order to service this customer well. So we had to walk away, and that's okay. We want the best thing, and we don't want to put a burden, because this is straining on existing employees, because they're now picking up people that they have to train, right? They have to show them the way, show them the ropes, show them the process. So in some way, we have to talk about what's in it for them, and what does growth mean for the employee, and I take them through the journey of of where we came from and where we are now, because as we hire new people, they don't know that I cleaned the toilets when we first started, and we didn't have 401k, and we didn't have paid benefits, and we didn't have great parties in the summer, crab feasts and Christmas parties. So, it's really evolved, and what's in it for them is better pay, better hours, a work-life balance, being a part of a growing organism that's rewarding. So, growth means a lot for the employee, and being a part of that, I think, is something special.
That's an incredible trajectory. 8 million now, kind of with all the companies together and growing because you're still looking actively. So let's shift to kind of actionable thoughts. If someone's listening and they're a business owner and they're saying, I want to make my business more attractive to a potential buyer.
Yeah.
What are 3 things that they should start doing today?
Oh, get their finances in order. Get with the accountant and make sure that it's clear. They're not messy. That's number one. I would say number two, I'm talking about from a P&L standpoint, and then clean up the balance sheet. If there's stuff, sometimes companies can get lackadaisical, especially over time with their balance sheet, and just make it very clear. And have all of that together. So that's 2, right? Is that 1 or 2? I don't know.
Well, 1 would be get finances in order. 2,
Yeah.
clean up balance sheet. I guess that
Yeah.
could go along, but you know what? You can add as many as you'd like. It's
Yeah.
okay.
All right. Is understand their customer base. So, and what I'll say to this is, operator owners, if you will, don't they don't have that finger on the pulse of the customer, and knowing who's at the top, and what that sales looks like, what that customer looks like, and what the relationship is. So understanding that and being able to talk about the top 10 customers, and where they've been and where they're going, I think is really important to me or to somebody that's looking to acquire that business, right? Is that's your lifeblood, is that customer relationship. So understanding that and being able to talk in detail about it, and not necessarily sharing names, but knowing what industry they are, where they've come from, how they've grown with you, and knowing, hey, are they in good financial shape? Are they going to go out of business tomorrow? That's really important.
Yeah. So it's about minimizing how you perceive them in terms of risk.
Yeah, exactly. Those are a lot of the things that we talk about, and then just employees is having a recent review done, understanding what people do. Believe it or not, there's a lot of owners that don't really know what some of their employees do. So having that data to collect, is super important.
Okay, that's awesome. That's super helpful.
Yeah.
And if someone is listening and they get an unsolicited letter from you or anyone else, what do you hope that they do with it?
If they're interested, call. If they're not interested, tell them. And just respond either way, to either take it off the list, or hey, let's just talk. If anything, what I've developed relationships with people that have, we've started this conversation and things have changed for them for the positive, and they're not interested in selling anymore. And one company that we actually met with is, I hope that I would be a resource. Our going back to our mission is, we want to be a resource to anybody that we come in contact with. So if at the very least we have a conversation about that situation that they're in, whether they're looking to sell or not really, this is the first time they thought about it, and maybe they just want to have a conversation about it, is, it might be something different. It might be, hey, they need a number 2 that's going to come alongside of them and help them get to the next level. And that's really what they're missing. And that happened to an acquisition. It was a younger gentleman, and he wanted to do something different, right? He was kind of tired of what he was doing, wanted to move, wanted to be with family, and he had a great business. It was profitable. It ran itself. He needed a number 2. He needed somebody to run it, and he could just walk away, and he would have made a lot more money doing that than selling it. So,
Yeah. Now, winding down here, 2 last questions for you. One is if you have a favorite quote that you'd like to share about leadership or entrepreneurship.
Yeah, sure. It's not necessarily about leadership. It's who we are foundationally, and I'll caveat that at the end. And it's definitely an Aristotle quote. My wife had put that on all of our printed material when we first got in business, and it's we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. And I always put at the end of that is, but when we do screw up and we're not so excellent, it's how you handle that is what makes the difference and makes who you are.
Yeah, acknowledging how to make it better, acknowledging the fix.
Yeah.
That's powerful for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Nelson, if people want to find you, what's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, sure. Nelson, Nelson at fullsail.media. That's the best email address. You can also find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, Nelson, thanks so much for sharing your stories about your growth as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and also sharing some words of advice for companies that might want to get acquired someday. I think that there's great lessons learned here, so appreciate your time.
Laurie, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
My objective is for you to have a lucrative and successful succession. If you want to understand the value of your company today, the potential net proceeds of a transaction, and your financial needs after you leave the business, that's a great place to start. The sooner you understand these numbers, the more time you'll have to close the gap if there is one. Take the next step by requesting an initial meeting to begin planning for your business transition and strategic exit today. Request a call with me by visiting smalldotbig.com. That's smalldotbig.com. I look forward to speaking with you.